Intro. Inside the hospital. The room smelled like antiseptic and silence. Lewis lay still on the narrow hospital bed, staring at a ceiling he had memorized by heart. Every crack, every faint stain, every flickering fluorescent light that reminded him time was moving, even though his life felt completely stuck. Just months ago, Lewis was the man people called when life fell apart. The man who paid hospital bills without asking questions. The man who sent money quietly and said, "Don't worry, you'll be fine." Now, here he was, 38 years old, jobless, sick, broke, and alone. His phone buzzed beside him, but it wasn't a message of comfort. It was a reminder from the hospital billing department. Another payment overdue. Another number he couldn't meet. His bank account had been drained not by luxury, not by recklessness, but by survival. Lewis shifted slightly, pain shooting through his side. His body was tired. His spirit was worse. He closed his eyes, and her voice came rushing back. "I can't take this anymore." That was the sentence that shattered him more than any diagnosis ever could. Yvonne, his fiancée, the woman he planned to grow old with, stood at the foot of his bed weeks earlier, arms folded, eyes distant. She didn't shout. She didn't cry. She simply gave up. No promises. No, "we'll figure it out." Just departure. She walked away when he needed her most. The man who once built roads and bridges now couldn't stand on his own. Lewis wondered how life could be so cruel, how a heart that gave so freely could end up empty-handed when it mattered most. He had helped family, friends, even strangers. Yet in his darkest hour, the room was silent. No footsteps, no familiar voices. Just machines humming, counting the seconds. Then his phone rang. An unfamiliar sound in a place where hope had died. Lewis hesitated before answering. His voice was weak when he finally spoke. "Hello." On the other end was Edward, his childhood friend. A name from a past where laughter came easily and life felt lighter. Lewis hadn't wanted to call. Pride held him back. Shame weighed him down. But desperation has a way of humbling even the strongest men. That call, made with trembling hands and a breaking voice, would change everything. Because sometimes, when life strips you of your job, your health, your relationship, and your dignity, it leaves you with one final test. Will you give up? Or will you allow help to find you? This is not just a story about heartbreak. It is a story about abandonment, redemption, and the quiet power of kindness returning when it's least expected. She left when he lost everything. Life restored what he never expected. This is the story of Lewis. The man who gave without counting. Before the hospital rooms, before the silence, before life reduced Lewis to waiting rooms and unanswered calls, there was a version of him that the world leaned on without hesitation. Lewis was the kind of man people described with quiet admiration. Not flashy, not loud, just reliable. At 38, he had built a solid life through discipline and sacrifice. As a civil engineer working for a mid-sized construction firm in Austin, Texas, his days started early and ended late. While most people saw roads, bridges, and concrete structures, Lewis saw responsibility. Every project was more than a job. It was proof that hard work could create something lasting. He took pride in being useful. At work, colleagues trusted him with the toughest assignments. When deadlines tightened or pressure mounted, Lewis never complained. He stayed late, fixed mistakes that weren't his, and carried burdens others quietly stepped away from. He believed real strength was shown in consistency, not recognition. But it was outside the office where Lewis truly revealed who he was. He was the man family members called when school fees were overdue. The friend who sent money without being asked. The stranger who paid hospital bills and disappeared before receiving thanks. Lewis never kept count. He never reminded anyone of what he had done. In his mind, help wasn't a transaction. It was a responsibility. He believed that when you had more, you shared. When you were able, you gave. And when people were down, you lifted them quietly so their dignity stayed intact. That mindset followed him everywhere. When his younger cousin lost his job, Lewis covered rent for 3 months. When a former colleague had a medical emergency, Lewis stepped in without posting it online or expecting praise. Even people he barely knew remembered him as that guy who helped when no one else did. To Lewis, generosity wasn't a personality trait. It was simply who he was. It was during this stable season of his life that he met Yvonne. Yvonne was a nurse, focused, disciplined, and respected at the government-owned hospital where she worked. She admired Lewis's calm confidence, his sense of purpose, and the way he seemed to have life under control. Around him, things felt safe, predictable, secure. Their relationship grew steadily. No chaos, no drama, just routines, shared meals, conversations about the future. Lewis spoke about building a family. Yvonne spoke about career growth and stability. Together, they planned a life that looked solid on paper. When Lewis proposed, it felt like a natural next step. Family and friends celebrated the engagement with joy. To them, Lewis had earned happiness. He was the man who always showed up for others. Surely life would show up for him too. But beneath the surface of his stable life, Lewis was fighting something he rarely spoke about. A health condition he had learned to manage quietly. At first, it was just fatigue. Long days at construction sites left him more tired than usual. Occasional pain. Doctor's visits squeezed into lunch breaks. Medication taken discreetly, so no one worried. Lewis didn't want to be seen as weak. He didn't want sympathy. And most importantly, he didn't want to become a burden. So he adjusted. He pushed through. He told himself it was temporary. Yvonne noticed changes. Missed dinners, exhaustion, shorter patience. But Lewis brushed it off. Work stress, he said. Nothing serious. And for a while, that lie worked. The projects continued. The paychecks came in. Life moved forward. Lewis kept giving, kept helping, kept believing that as long as he stayed strong, everything would hold together. What he didn't realize was that life was quietly preparing him for a test that generosity alone could not pass. The same hands that built bridges would soon struggle to hold on to stability. The same man others depended on would soon need help himself. And when that moment arrived, Lewis would discover something far more painful than illness or job loss. He would learn who truly knew how to stay. The silent illness. Louis had always believed that strength meant endurance. It meant waking up when your body begged you to rest. It meant showing up when excuses would have been easier. It meant carrying pain quietly so the people who depended on you never had to worry. So when the first signs appeared, Louis told himself it was nothing. Just fatigue. Construction work was demanding. Long hours on site, constant movement, pressure to meet deadlines. Anyone would be tired. That's what he told himself each time his body felt heavier than usual. Each time his head throbbed a little longer than it should. But fatigue turned into something else. Mornings became harder. His alarm rang, but his body resisted rising. There were days when even simple movements felt like he was pushing against invisible weight. His hands sometimes trembled when holding blueprints. His focus drifted during meetings. Louis noticed, but he didn't slow down. He had learned long ago that life does not pause for weakness. During a routine checkup, the doctor's expression changed. The room felt suddenly smaller. Test results were reviewed again and again, as if repetition could soften the meaning. Chronic kidney disease. The words landed quietly but heavily. The doctor explained it carefully, how the kidneys were no longer functioning at full capacity, how it could be managed with medication, lifestyle adjustments, regular monitoring. There was no immediate danger, the doctor said. Many people lived long, productive lives with it. Louis nodded, listening carefully, storing the information away like another task to manage. He didn't panic. He didn't complain. He didn't tell anyone. To Louis, illness was not something to announce, it was something to handle. So he adapted. He took his medication faithfully. He changed his diet. He scheduled appointments early in the morning so they wouldn't interfere with work. He learned to read his body, to push just enough without collapsing. On the outside, nothing changed. At work, Louis remained dependable. He supervised projects, resolved conflicts, stayed late when needed. His colleagues noticed he looked thinner, quieter, but no one questioned it deeply. Louis had always been private. At home, Yvonne noticed small things. He fell asleep earlier than usual. He sometimes canceled evening plans. He winced occasionally when standing too fast. She asked him once, gently, if everything was okay. Louis smiled and said, "Just work stress." And she believed him, because Louis had always been the man who handled things. But illness is patient. It doesn't rush. It waits. As months passed, the symptoms grew bolder. Louis's energy declined sharply. Tasks that once took hours now drained him completely. Some mornings, he sat in his car outside the construction site, gripping the steering wheel, gathering strength just to step out. He started making small mistakes, nothing catastrophic, but enough to unsettle him. He double-checked calculations obsessively. He reread emails before sending them. He feared that if he slipped even once, everything he had built would unravel. Medical bills began to accumulate quietly in the background. Insurance covered some costs, but not all. Specialist visits, lab tests, medications, it added up. Louis paid without hesitation, pulling from savings he had built over years of discipline. This was what savings were for, he told himself. Still, he didn't ask for help. He had helped too many people to now become one. Yvonne sensed a shift, not just in his body, but in his spirit. Louis grew quieter, more withdrawn. Conversations shortened. Laughter came less often. The man who once spoke confidently about the future now avoided long-term plans. When wedding discussions came up, Louis changed the subject. Yvonne felt confused. She was trained to recognize illness in patients, but love sometimes blinds even professionals. She interpreted his distance as emotional withdrawal, not physical decline. Louis wanted to tell her. Many nights, he lay awake beside her, staring into the dark, rehearsing the conversation in his mind. Explaining the diagnosis, admitting fear, asking for patience. But the words never came. What if she looked at him differently? What if she saw weakness instead of reliability? What if he became a burden instead of a partner? Louis had spent his life being needed, not needing. And so, he chose silence. The condition worsened gradually, then suddenly. His body began to betray routines he had mastered. Swelling appeared. Nausea lingered. Dizziness interrupted his days. There were mornings when climbing stairs felt like scaling a mountain. At work, the pressure intensified. Deadlines didn't care about diagnoses. Projects demanded physical presence. Long hours on site became impossible. Louis tried to keep up, but his body no longer negotiated. It demanded rest. He took sick days reluctantly, then more frequently. Meetings happened without him. Responsibilities were quietly reassigned. Concerned looks replaced trust. Louis sensed what was coming long before it happened. One afternoon, after another missed deadline and another medical absence, he was called into a meeting. The conversation was polite, professional, regretful, but the message was clear. They needed someone who could meet the demands consistently. Louis nodded, accepting the decision with calm dignity. He thanked them. He shook hands. He walked out carrying more than a termination letter. He carried the weight of knowing that the illness he had hidden had finally taken everything from him. Without work, his routine collapsed. Medical appointments became more frequent. Bills arrived faster. Savings dwindled rapidly. Louis watched numbers shrink on his bank statements, each one a reminder that generosity, discipline, and silence had not prepared him for this moment. The man who had always been strong was now fragile. And still, he told no one. Not yet. Because Louis believed that if he could just hold on a little longer, if he could just get through this quietly, if he could just survive without burdening anyone, everything would somehow return to normal. He didn't know then that silence, once protective, was about to become his greatest enemy. When work rejects him, losing strength is one thing. Losing purpose is another. For Louis, work had never just been a paycheck. It was structure, identity, proof that he was still useful to the world. Even as his body weakened, he clung to his job like a lifeline, believing that as long as he could work, he could survive everything else. But illness does not respect effort. At first, Louis tried to compensate. When his body slowed down, he pushed harder. When fatigue hit, he stayed longer. He arrived earlier than everyone else, hoping no one would notice how much it took just to stand upright. Coffee replaced rest. Determination replaced health. On the construction site, he masked his pain with professionalism. He leaned on railings when no one was watching. He studied blueprints while seated instead of standing. He avoided climbing where possible, telling himself it was efficiency, not weakness. Still, people noticed. Colleagues whispered, not maliciously, but with concern. Supervisors began asking gentle questions. Are you okay? Do you need time off? Louis always smiled and said the same thing. "I'm fine." But fine was becoming a lie his body could no longer support. Deadlines began to slip. Not by much, but enough. Louis missed one site visit, then another. He submitted reports later than usual. Meetings went on without him. Decisions were made in his absence. The company was changing too. New projects meant tighter schedules. There was no room for unpredictability. No margin for weakness. Louis felt it long before it was said out loud. The quiet reassignment of responsibilities. The polite emails checking his availability. The careful tone people used when they spoke to him. He had gone from being relied upon to being managed. One morning, Louis woke up knowing something was wrong. Not emotionally, physically. His body felt heavy, unresponsive. Standing made his vision blur. He sat on the edge of the bed, hands pressed against his knees, breathing slowly. He thought of calling in sick. Then he thought of his bills, his treatments, his savings that were shrinking faster than he'd expected. So he went in anyway. By midday, it was clear he shouldn't have. The sun was unforgiving. The noise of the site felt louder than usual. Instructions blurred together. Louis tried to focus, but his mind felt distant, like it was operating a second behind reality. When he finally sat down, someone noticed the paleness of his skin. A supervisor suggested he take the rest of the day off. Louis nodded, embarrassed. That afternoon, the email arrived. A request for a meeting. He stared at the screen longer than necessary. His chest tightened, not from illness this time, but from understanding. He knew. The meeting room was quiet, neutral, professional. There were no raised voices, no accusations, just carefully chosen words. They appreciated his years of service. They acknowledged his contributions. They expressed concern for his health. Then they explained the reality. The role required physical presence and consistent performance. Projects were demanding. Clients expected results. The company needed someone who could meet those demands without interruption. Louis listened, nodding slowly. He didn't argue. He didn't beg. He didn't explain his illness in detail. He had always believed dignity mattered, especially when you were losing something important. When it was over, he shook hands, thanked them for the opportunity, picked up his belongings quietly. Walking out of the building felt unreal. The parking lot was the same. The sky looked normal. People passed by, unaware that his life had just fractured. Louis sat in his car for a long time before starting the engine. No anger, no tears, just emptiness. At home, the silence was louder than any construction site. His phone stayed still. No emails, no calls, no tasks waiting to be completed. For the first time in years, Louis had nowhere to be. The bills arrived soon after. Medical expenses that insurance didn't fully cover. Prescription refills. Follow-up appointments. Test after test. Each envelope chipped away at his savings. Louis paid what he could, telling himself it was temporary. But temporary stretched into weeks. Then months. He watched his bank balance decline with quiet disbelief. Money he had saved carefully. Money he had once given away without hesitation. Now every withdrawal hurt. Louis cut expenses ruthlessly. No eating out. No unnecessary purchases. He canceled subscriptions. Sold items he didn't need. Pride swallowed, dignity preserved as best as he could. Yvonne noticed the changes. She saw the tension in his shoulders. The way he avoided financial conversations. The way he stared at nothing sometimes, lost in thought. She asked him if he was okay. Louis wanted to say everything. He wanted to admit he had lost his job, that his health was worse, that he was scared. Instead, he said, "I'm handling it." But handling it was becoming impossible. Without work, Louis lost more than income. He lost routine, purpose, confidence, the sense of being needed. Days blurred together. Medical appointments replaced meetings. Waiting rooms replaced construction sites. Silence replaced responsibility. He began to feel invisible. The man who once carried others was now struggling to carry himself. As savings dwindled, panic crept in quietly. Not dramatic panic, controlled, calculated fear. Louis began counting days instead of dollars. How long could he last? What would happen if the money ran out before his health improved? He didn't ask for help. He couldn't. Asking felt like failure. The illness had taken his strength. Now unemployment was taking his identity. And with each passing day, the gap between the man he was and the man he had become grew wider. Louis didn't know it yet, but losing his job was not the end. It was the door to something far more painful. Because when stability disappears, relationships are tested next. I can't take this anymore. There are moments in life when pain announces itself loudly, through shouting, chaos, or slammed doors. And then there are moments when pain arrives quietly, in a calm voice, with folded arms, and words that end everything. Louis didn't see it coming the way people imagine breakups happen. There was no dramatic fight. No accusations thrown across the room. No shattered objects or raised voices. Just distance. It began subtly. Yvonne stopped asking about his day. Conversations that once flowed easily now ended quickly. She spent more time on her phone, more time silent, more time away, even when she was right beside him. Louis noticed, of course. He noticed everything. But he told himself it was temporary. Stress, he thought. Everyone was under pressure. This phase would pass. He didn't realize that while he was fighting to survive, she was already preparing to leave. One evening, as Louis sat at the kitchen table reviewing medical paperwork, Yvonne stood near the doorway. She watched him quietly for a long moment, the way you look at someone when you're already halfway gone. "Can we talk?" she said. Louis looked up, forcing a small smile. "Sure." She didn't sit down. That's when he knew something was wrong. She spoke slowly, carefully, like someone who had rehearsed the conversation many times in their head. "This isn't what I signed up for." The words landed softly, but they carried weight. Louis frowned, confused. "What do you mean?" Yvonne sighed. Not angrily, tiredly. "I feel like everything is falling apart," she said. "Your health, your job, the money. I'm constantly worried. I'm exhausted." Louis swallowed. He wanted to explain. He wanted to tell her how scared he was too. How every day felt like a battle just to remain standing. "I'm doing everything I can," he said quietly. "This is temporary. I just need time." She shook her head. I can't take this anymore. There it was. No shouting. No tears. Just finality. Louis stared at her, trying to understand how 4 words could undo years of love, promises, and plans. I thought we were a team, he said, his voice barely steady. I need stability, Yvonne replied. I need peace. I can't live like this. What she didn't say hurt more than what she did. She didn't say we'll figure it out. She didn't say I'll stay. She didn't say this will pass. She said she was done. Louis felt something break inside him, not loudly, but completely. He had stood strong through illness. He had endured job loss with dignity. But this was different. Because illness attacks the body. Unemployment attacks the mind. But abandonment attacks the soul. He tried one last time. I'm still me, he said. I haven't changed. Yvonne looked away. That's the problem, she said softly. Everything else has. She packed a bag that night. Louis watched silently as she moved through the apartment, gathering pieces of a life they had planned together. Her movements were efficient, detached. The ring he had placed on her finger with hope and certainty was removed and left on the counter. When the door closed behind her, it wasn't loud. It was final. Louis remained standing long after she left. The apartment felt different, bigger, emptier, colder. The silence pressed against his chest. Every sound, the hum of the refrigerator, the ticking clock, felt louder now. He sat down slowly, as if his legs had forgotten how to hold him. That night, Louis didn't cry. He stared. At the wall. At the ring. At the version of himself who believed love stayed. In the days that followed, the weight of her absence settled in. No good morning messages. No shared meals. No quiet reassurance during sleepless nights. The illness worsened under the stress. Louis found himself in and out of hospitals more frequently. Alone. No hand to hold. No familiar face waiting. He had lost his job. He had lost his health. Now he had lost the person who was supposed to stand beside him. Louis asked himself the question many broken people ask in silence. If I was there for everyone, why was no one here for me? He replayed memories, searching for mistakes. Should he have spoken sooner? Asked for help? Been less strong? But deep down, another truth began to form. Painful, but clear. Some people love the version of you that is easy. Very few love the version of you that is struggling. And that realization hurt more than the breakup itself. Louis didn't hate Yvonne. He didn't curse her name or wish her harm. He simply felt empty. And as his world collapsed inward, Louis reached a place he had never been before, a place where strength ran out, pride fell away, and survival demanded humility. That was when he reached for his phone. That was when he called Edward. Because when everyone else walks away, sometimes all that remains is the courage to ask for help. The call that saved his life. Louis stared at his phone for a long time before pressing the call button. The screen glowed in the dim hospital room, illuminating a name he hadn't said out loud in years. Edward. A name from a time when life was simpler. When friendship didn't need explanations. When asking for help didn't feel like failure. Louis's thumb hovered over the screen. Pride fought desperately for one last stand. He had spent his entire life being the helper, the provider, the strong one. Calling Edward meant admitting he couldn't do this alone anymore. But pain has a way of stripping pride down to nothing. With a quiet breath, Louis pressed call. It rang once, then twice. Edward answered immediately. Louis. His voice carried surprise, then concern. Is everything okay? Louis tried to speak, but his throat tightened. For a moment, only silence passed between them. Then the words came, broken, uneven, heavy. I'm not okay. That was all it took. Edward didn't interrupt. He didn't rush to fix anything. He simply listened as Louis explained about the illness he had kept hidden, the job he had lost, the savings that were gone, and the woman who had walked away when everything fell apart. By the time Louis finished, his voice was barely a whisper. Edward said nothing for a moment. Then quietly he said, "Where are you?" Edward visited him the very next day. When Edward walked into the hospital room, he froze. The man lying in the bed barely resembled the friend he remembered. The once strong posture was gone. The confident energy replaced by frailty. Machines surrounded him. Tubes traced lines across his body. Edward swallowed hard. "This is not how this was supposed to go," he said softly. Louis tried to joke, but it came out weak. Life had other plans. Edward pulled up a chair and sat beside him. "Why didn't you tell me?" he asked. Louis looked away. "Because I thought I could handle it." Edward nodded slowly. "You always did. That's the problem." Edward stayed for hours that day. They talked about childhood memories, mistakes, old dreams. For the first time in months, Louis felt seen, not as a burden, not as a problem, but as a person who mattered. Before leaving, Edward made a promise. "I'm not leaving you like this," he said. "We'll figure something out." Louis didn't know what that meant, but for the first time in a long while, hope stirred quietly inside him. Edward kept his word. That evening, Edward sat at his laptop, staring at the screen. He thought about all the times Louis had helped others. The money he had given without asking for anything back. The quiet kindness that had gone unnoticed. And Edward realized something painful. The world had benefited from Louis's generosity, but Louis had never asked the world for anything. Edward decided to change that. He wrote a post. Simple, honest, and raw. No exaggeration. No drama. Just the truth. He shared Louis's story. A civil engineer who had spent his life helping others, now battling a serious illness alone. He posted photos of Louis in the hospital, with Louis's permission, and asked for help. Not pity. Help. Then he pressed share. At first, nothing happened. Edward refreshed the page repeatedly, wondering if he had done the right thing. He worried about Louis's pride, about public judgment, about silence. Then the first donation came in. Small, modest. Then another, and another. Messages followed. I remember Louis. He helped my cousin. He paid my medical bills years ago. I don't know him personally, but I want to help. The numbers grew slowly, then suddenly. Louis watched from his hospital bed as Edward showed him the updates. He shook his head in disbelief, tears forming in his eyes. I didn't know people remembered, Louis whispered. Edward smiled. They always do. Kindness doesn't disappear. The donations became enough to change everything. Enough to schedule the surgery Louis desperately needed. Enough to cover treatment costs. Enough to give him breathing room, to heal without the constant fear of running out of money. The day Louis was wheeled into surgery, Edward stood nearby, hands clasped tightly. "You're going to be okay," he said. And for the first time, Louis believed it. The surgery was successful. Recovery was slow, but real. Each day brought small improvements. Strength returned gradually. Color came back to his face. Hope replaced fear. Louis wasn't just surviving anymore. He was healing. He often thought about the irony of it all. How the man who never asked for help had been saved by asking once. How the friend he had helped long ago now carried him when he couldn't walk alone. Louis understood something deeply then. Sometimes life doesn't break you to punish you. Sometimes it breaks you so others can carry you. So you can finally see how much your kindness mattered. When the world brings help. Louis had spent most of his life believing that kindness was a quiet act, something you did without witnesses, without expectation, without applause. You helped because it was right, not because it would ever come back to you. What he didn't know was that kindness leaves echoes, and those echoes were about to answer him. In the days following the surgery, Louis drifted in and out of sleep. His body was weak, but something inside him felt lighter. The constant fear, the kind that lives in your chest when you don't know how you'll survive tomorrow, had loosened its grip. When he woke up fully for the first time, Edward was there. Not just sitting quietly this time, but smiling. "You need to see this," Edward said, holding up his phone. Louis squinted at the screen. Messages filled it. Notifications stacked endlessly. Names he recognized. Names he didn't. Words of encouragement. Prayers. Stories. "He helped me when my father was sick. I never forgot what he did for my family. I don't know him personally, but I believe in this." Louis stared in disbelief. The donations had not stopped. They kept coming, not in dramatic waves, but in steady, relentless proof that what you give into the world never truly disappears. Louis felt overwhelmed. Not by money, but by memory. People remembered. They remembered the envelopes he handed over quietly. The hospital bills he paid without leaving a name. The times he showed up when no one else did. For years, he thought those moments vanished into the past. But they had been waiting. Now, they were returning to him when he needed them most. As his recovery progressed, Louis was moved to a quieter ward. The machines were fewer. The air felt calmer. Nurses checked in regularly, surprised at how quickly he was stabilizing. Physically, the surgery had worked. Emotionally, something even deeper was healing. Louis began to understand that asking for help had not diminished him. It had revealed how deeply connected he was to others. Edward visited every day. Sometimes they talked. Sometimes they didn't. Sometimes they just sat in silence, watching sunlight spill across the hospital floor. One afternoon, Louis finally said what had been sitting in his chest for weeks. "I didn't think I mattered this much," he admitted quietly. Edward looked at him. "That's because you never stopped to see the impact you were having. You were too busy giving." Those words stayed with Lewis. As the weeks passed, Lewis was discharged from the hospital. He walked out slowly, carefully, but on his own feet. The man who had entered broken was leaving restored. Not finished, not perfect, but alive, with possibility. The donations had covered more than surgery. They had bought Lewis time. Time to heal properly. Time to breathe. Time to think. For the first time since losing his job, Lewis wasn't panicking about survival. The noise in his head quieted enough for reflection to begin. At home, things still felt empty. Yvonne's absence was noticeable. The apartment carried memories that no longer belonged to him. But now, instead of crushing him, the emptiness felt transitional, like a bridge between what was and what could be. Lewis began rebuilding slowly. He followed his recovery plan strictly. He rested when his body demanded it. He stopped trying to prove strength through exhaustion. He learned to listen to himself. Edward encouraged him to reconnect with people he had withdrawn from. Old friends checked in. Some apologized for not noticing sooner. Others simply said, "We're here now." Lewis didn't blame anyone. He understood something important now. People don't always abandon you out of cruelty. Sometimes they just don't know how to stay. One afternoon, while sorting through messages of support, Lewis came across a note that made him pause. It was from someone he had helped years ago, someone he barely remembered. "You didn't save my life that day," the message read, "but you saved my hope. I promised myself that if I ever got the chance, I would return that kindness." Lewis set the phone down and exhaled slowly. This was what he had been missing all along. Kindness was not currency. It was investment. And the returns weren't always immediate, but they were always meaningful. As his strength returned, Lewis began thinking about work again. Not urgently, not desperately, but thoughtfully. He knew his body had limits now. He couldn't return to the same demanding pace he once maintained. And for the first time, he didn't see that as failure. He saw it as wisdom. Edward, watching Lewis regain confidence, made a call of his own, to someone who remembered Lewis for reasons beyond illness and misfortune. Someone who had once admired his work ethic. Someone who believed in second chances. That call would open a door Lewis thought had closed forever. But before that door could open, Lewis had to understand something first. Life had taken him apart piece by piece. His health, his job, his relationship. But it had not done so to destroy him. It had done so to show him who he really was when everything familiar was gone. And now, as the world quietly answered back with compassion, Lewis realized he wasn't standing at the end of his story. He was standing at the beginning of his breakthrough. A second chance at life. Recovery didn't arrive all at once. It came quietly, through small victories that would have once seemed insignificant. Walking without dizziness. Sleeping through the night. Waking up without pain curling tightly around his ribs. Each improvement reminded Lewis that life was slowly returning to him, one breath at a time. For the first time in months, mornings no longer felt like battles. Lewis followed his recovery plan with discipline. He ate properly, rested without guilt, attended follow-up appointments without fear. The man who once pushed himself beyond limits was now learning something unfamiliar, but necessary. balance. Edward noticed the change before Lewis did. The posture, the steadiness in his voice, the way hope quietly re-entered his sentences. One afternoon, as they sat together on Lewis's balcony watching the city drift by, Edward broke the silence. "You've been through hell," he said. "But you're not done yet." Lewis gave a small smile. "I don't even know where to start." Edward nodded. "You don't start where you were. You start where you are." That conversation lingered. Lewis knew he couldn't return to the same kind of work he once did. Long hours on construction sites, constant physical strain, it was no longer sustainable. And strangely, admitting that didn't feel like defeat. It felt like honesty. For the first time, Lewis allowed himself to imagine a different version of success, one that didn't require breaking his body to prove his worth. Around that time, Edward reached out to someone Lewis hadn't spoken to in years. John. John had once been a colleague, sharp, ambitious, and business-minded. Over the years, he had grown into a successful entrepreneur, building connections across industries. He remembered Lewis not for his illness or misfortune, but for his integrity. Edward didn't exaggerate Lewis's story. He didn't sell tragedy. He simply spoke the truth. "A good man fell down," Edward said, "and he's standing back up." John listened. And then he said something that caught Edward off guard. "I've been waiting for someone like him." Within days, Lewis received a message asking if he'd be open to a conversation. Not an interview. A conversation. They met in a quiet office. No pressure, no judgment. John asked about Lewis's health, his limits, his goals. Lewis answered honestly. No bravado. No pretending. "I still love engineering," Lewis said. "I just need work that respects the fact that I'm human." John smiled. "That's exactly what we value." The role wasn't the same as before. It was better. Project planning, design oversight, mentorship, strategy. Work that used Lewis's mind more than his body. A role that valued experience, not endurance. When Lewis received the offer, he didn't celebrate immediately. He sat quietly, absorbing it. A second chance didn't feel loud or dramatic. It felt sacred. On his first day back at work, Lewis stood in front of the building longer than necessary. He breathed deeply, not out of fear, but gratitude. This time, he wasn't trying to prove anything. He was simply present. Work gave him structure again, but not at the cost of his health. His confidence returned gradually. Colleagues respected his insight. Younger engineers leaned on his guidance. For the first time in a long while, Lewis felt useful without feeling expendable. Life outside work began to change too. With stability came openness. Lewis started saying yes to invitations again. Dinners with friends. Quiet social gatherings. Moments that reminded him he was still part of the world. That's where he met Lola. There was nothing dramatic about their first encounter. No sparks flying. No instant connection. Just conversation. Easy, unforced, genuine. Lola listened when Lewis spoke. Asked thoughtful questions. Never rushed answers. When Lewis eventually shared his story, not all at once, but piece by piece, she didn't flinch. She didn't see weakness. She saw resilience. What surprised Lewis most wasn't that she stayed. It was that she never made him feel like he had to earn it. Their relationship unfolded slowly, carefully, with intention. Lola respected his limits, encouraged his growth, loved him without conditions attached to performance or stability. For the first time, Louis experienced love without fear of collapse. They built a life that honored health, honesty, and peace. Marriage followed, not as an escape from loneliness, but as a conscious choice. 2 children later, Louis would sometimes sit quietly and marvel at how different his life looked from the one he thought he had lost forever. The pain hadn't vanished from memory, but it no longer defined him. Louis understood something now that he hadn't before. Losing everything had not erased him. It had refined him. He no longer chased validation through sacrifice. He no longer confused endurance with love. He no longer measured worth by how much he could give away. He measured it by how whole he felt standing still. And one quiet afternoon, walking through a shopping mall with his family, Louis would come face to face with a chapter he had already closed, only to realize how far he had truly come. But that was still ahead. For now, Louis stood firmly in his second chance. Not as the man he used to be, but as the man life had shaped him to become. The final encounter. Louis wasn't expecting the past to find him again. Life had settled into a rhythm that felt earned. Not rushed. Not forced. Just steady. On that afternoon, he moved through the shopping mall with no weight on his chest, no fear pressing at the back of his mind. Lola walked beside him, one child holding each of their hands, laughter echoing lightly as they stopped to look at a toy store display. Louis felt present, grounded, whole. And then, he saw her. At first, it didn't register. Just a familiar silhouette across the open space near the escalators. But memory has a way of waking up suddenly. The posture, the hair, the hesitation in her step. Yvonne. Louis slowed without realizing it. She stood alone near a storefront, dressed neatly, scrolling through her phone. She looked well. Older, perhaps. More reserved. But unmistakably her. For a brief moment, time folded in on itself. Hospitals. Silence. The ring left on the counter. The words that ended everything. I can't take this anymore. Louis felt the echo of that sentence, but it no longer pierced him. Lola noticed the change in his pace. She followed his gaze and then looked back at him, silently asking a question. It's okay, Louis said gently. I'll be right back. He walked toward Yvonne slowly, not out of anger or longing, but curiosity. When she looked up and saw him, her expression froze. Surprise. Disbelief. Then something deeper. Recognition. Louis, she said quietly. He nodded. Hi, Yvonne. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The noise of the mall faded into the background as if the world had stepped back to give them space. You look... She stopped herself. You look good. Louis smiled politely. I'm well. She glanced past him and noticed Lola and the children waiting nearby. Her eyes lingered there longer than she intended. I heard you were sick, Yvonne said softly. I didn't know if... I'm better now, Louis replied. Come. Steady. There was no bitterness in his voice. No edge. That seemed to unsettle her more than anger would have. I'm glad, she said. I really am. They stood in silence again. This time, it was Yvonne who broke it. I owe you an apology. Louis raised his eyebrows slightly, not in shock, but acknowledgement. I wasn't strong enough, she continued. I thought I was. But when everything fell apart, I ran. Her voice cracked. Not dramatically. Just enough to reveal truth. I'm sorry. Louis listened carefully. He thought about the nights alone, the hospital rooms, the feeling of being discarded when he was already broken. He thought about how that pain had reshaped him, how it had nearly consumed him, then freed him. And he realized something important. Holding on to resentment would only tie him to a version of himself he no longer was. I forgive you, Louis said. The words came easily. Yvonne looked up at him, eyes glistening. Thank you, she whispered. Louis nodded once. I hope you're well. She glanced again toward Lola and the children. You have a beautiful family. I know, Louis said softly. There was no need to explain further. They stood there, two people who once shared dreams, now sharing closure. No reconciliation. No regretful promises. Just acceptance. Yvonne stepped back slightly. Take care, Louis. You too, he replied. As Louis turned away, he felt something settle inside him, a final release. Not relief. Freedom. When he rejoined Lola, she didn't ask questions. She simply took his hand. You okay? She asked. Louis smiled. Better than okay. They walked on together, blending back into the flow of ordinary life. The past no longer chased him. It no longer defined him. Louis understood now that healing isn't about proving anything to those who left. It's about becoming so whole that their absence no longer matters. And as the laughter of his children filled the space around him, Louis knew, without doubt, that life hadn't just restored him. It had rewritten him. What the storm revealed. Louis never thought the hardest season of his life would also become the most defining. For a long time, he believed life rewarded effort directly, that if you worked hard, stayed kind, and showed up for others, stability would always follow. That belief had guided him for years. It had built his career, shaped his relationships, and anchored his identity. But life doesn't always test your strength where you feel prepared. Sometimes it waits until you're already tired. Sometimes it strips away what you rely on most: health, work, love, just to ask one quiet question. Who are you when everything familiar disappears? Louis found that answer slowly. He learned that strength is not how much pain you can hide, but how honestly you face it. He learned that giving does not mean you'll never need help. It means that when you finally ask, the echoes of your kindness may answer back. And he learned that love, real love, is not measured by how someone celebrates your success, but by how they stand when you have nothing to offer. The illness humbled him. Losing his job exposed his weakness. Being abandoned forced him to confront a painful truth. Some people love the version of you that is easy. Very few love the version of you that is struggling. And that realization, as painful as it was, became a gift. Because it freed Louis from chasing approval. It freed him from confusing endurance with loyalty. It freed him from believing that suffering silently was the same as being strong. In losing Yvonne, Louis didn't lose love, he lost an illusion. What replaced it was something far more powerful. He gained perspective. He gained humility. He gained a deeper understanding of himself. When Edward showed up, Louis learned that help doesn't always come from where you expect. but often from where you once planted seeds without realizing it. When strangers donated, when old memories resurfaced, Lewis finally saw what his generosity had quietly built over a lifetime. Not applause, not recognition, but connection. Recovery gave him space to reimagine his life, not as it used to be, but as it could be. A life built around balance instead of sacrifice, around honesty instead of silence, around peace instead of proving. And when love returned, in the form of Lola, it came without conditions. She didn't ask him to be unshakable. She didn't need him to be unbreakable. She simply chose to stay. That, Lewis realized, was the difference between love that depends on circumstances and love that endures them. The final encounter with Yvonne didn't reopen wounds. It closed them. Forgiveness didn't mean forgetting the pain. It meant refusing to carry it forward. Lewis forgave her not because what she did was easy, but because holding on to resentment would keep him tied to a chapter he had already outgrown. Walking away that day, hand in hand with his family, Lewis understood something deeply. Life hadn't restored him to who he was before. It had shaped him into someone wiser, calmer, and more whole. And that is the true breakthrough. Life lessons, on-screen text/voiceover. 1. People who leave during your storms were never meant to enjoy your sunshine. 2. Kindness is never wasted. It returns, often when you least expect it. 3. Strength isn't suffering silently. It's knowing when to ask for help. 4. Loss doesn't always mean punishment. Sometimes it means redirection. 5. The right love meets you where you are, not where it benefits most. 6. Forgiveness is not reconciliation. It's freedom. At this point, I'll ask you one final question to think about. If everything you relied on disappeared tomorrow, who would you become? If this story touched something inside you, pause for a moment. Think about the seasons in your own life. The times you gave everything. The moments you were left alone. And the strength you didn't know you had. Sometimes, what breaks us is what finally reveals who we are. If you believe that every heartbreak carries a lesson, and every ending hides a breakthrough, then you belong here. Subscribe to Breakups and Breakthroughs for stories that heal, challenge, and remind us that life is never finished with us, even when it feels like it is. Share this story with someone who needs to hear it today. And remember, the breakup is not the end. The breakthrough is coming.